Hi guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. In this case, continuing with the topic of cordage. In this video I'm going to be talking about knots, and I know it's kind of boring. You think knots, you think 100 different knots, and I get it, it is kind of boring. But you definitely should know a few of them, at least some of the basic ones. I'm going to be showing you the ones that have been working well for me so far through the years. And you know, it's said that if you don't know how to knot, you just knot a lot. You see one knot over the other, and sometimes that's really not the case. You get unpleasant surprises when during certain times you use knots that you're not supposed to, or when you don't know what you're doing. So at least have some basic knowledge of what it is to do proper knots. Alright, I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. This is going to be maybe a 2 or 3 part video. I'll start with the basics, so please stick around. First of all, the most basic, most simple, granddaddy of all knots, the overhand knot. Right, we have a little loop, goes right through it, the working end, we pull. Overhand knot, very simple knot. It creates an entire family of knots that I'm going to be talking about in further videos. But so far, this is one of the simplest knot there is. So frequently used as a stop knot, and you can do quite cool things with it. At least if you know how to do this, combining it in different ways, you do some nice knots. Right. So far, mostly used as a stop knot. It does jam pretty bad if you put tension to it here, especially something like this, like a 550 paracord or something thinner. It does jam pretty bad. You have sometimes to end up cutting the cord because you cannot undo them. That quickly brings us to the second knot you definitely should know, which is the figure 8 knot. Easy to remember because it's basically by doing like a little figure 8 shape. You do first a little loop, and then on the other side coming under it and going through that little loop that you did at first, and it looks kind of like a figure 8, which is why it's called that way. This is a pretty safe knot. It's used a lot in climbing, and one of the nice things about it is that it's much easier to undo. It doesn't jam nearly as bad as the overhand knot, which is why sometimes I prefer to use it as a stop knot, so as to not have to cut it off if it's being stressed quite a bit. Right? Even if it's tightened pretty bad, you can pull it apart with certain ease. Quickly going to some of the other simple knots that you should know: the square knot or reef knot. Right? We go in one way, the other. Square knot or reef knot. Right, looks this way. Take a good look. I'm going to be doing it again. Right, that way, and comes on the other side as well. We pull it that way. Square knot, reef knot. These two pieces of cordage is going to be joining quite nicely with that knot. Now, careful when doing this. Don't do the mistake of doing simply an overhand knot and again an overhand knot and doing something that's called the granny knot, because it tends to undo on its own pretty fast and it's not nearly as effective. Now, the reef knot, square knot, very well known. I do like a variation of that. Instead of using those, I generally prefer to use something called the sheath bend knot, which goes something like this. This would be the typical reef or square knot. Instead of doing that, what you actually end up doing is, instead of going through that, you go under here and go on the other side. See that? Sheath bend knot. This is a bit more effective than the square or reef knot. Right? So keep that in mind. If you have to remember one, at least remember this one, the sheath bend knot. Right? Once more, just in case, we make a little bite here. We go inside on the back, and when we come back in front, we go under, and that's it. This is a pretty tough knot. It's going to be taking quite a bit of load. You can do this, you can reinforce it a little bit more by making another turn and doing it and doubling it. Right, we just go one time under it and around, and we come back again one more time. Right, same thing but doing it twice. that's gonna be pretty good, pretty tough, and it's not gonna be coming loose, right? Good knot. But the most simple variation is still pretty effective, unless it's something that's where you're hanging for your life, something like that, where you will be using other knots. This is a pretty good knot, even if we're using cordage of different dimensions, which is not the case here. That knot, the sheath bend knot, it's still pretty good. So keep it in mind. Finally, one more, the bowline knot, which you probably know about, and if you don't, you really have to listen up, because you definitely have to know this one. The bowline knots, there's a little story about it that makes it easier to remember our working end here. We do a little cave, right? And this working end, this would be a little rabbit or snake or whatever some people like to call it. It goes out the cave, it goes round the tree, and it goes back into the cave. And when we pull it back like that, we end up with a bowline knot. Bowline knot, nice thing is it's not going to be tightening or sliding, it's going to be staying that way. Okay, if done properly, it's going to be staying that way and not tightening. So if you have, for example, to use to tie a rope around your chest and your armpits, for example, to be saved or rescued during a disaster of some sort, remember this knot, because it does not tighten, it's not going to be hurting you. Okay, we do the little cave with this little loop. Alright, goes out of the cave, goes round the tree, and comes back inside. And as you pull it, you have the bowline knot. Remember this one, because it may end up saving your life one day. Keep that in mind. Alright folks, gonna be doing maybe another video or two about these, some more interesting, more fun, and more the practical side of some of these basic knots that we've done so far. So folks, remember to subscribe, keep in mind that there's more stuff coming up. Have a good day, see you on our next video.